Hi, everyone. I am Aubrey Harms, and I am here with my favorite coach in the world, Vanessa.
That's fair. I'm your only coach.
What's that?
That's not fair. I'm your only coach.
But you get to still be my favorite. And actually, this is a big day. This is not only my first Facebook Live, but also my first interview ever. And Vanessa very lovingly challenged me to do this and also volunteered to be my first guest. So, and
good accountability.
And this actually comes, really briefly, this comes from this place where I had spent a lot of time being afraid to do videos. And then I got through that challenge by challenging myself to do a video challenge and actually found out I really enjoyed them. And through that process, I also remembered that when I was a kid, I used to spend hours creating my own little radio shows. And I always have had the secret desire to have a podcast or have some sort of show and like share things with the world. But I never know what to do. So again, back to that loving challenge of how to incorporate that into what I'm doing now. I decided to just go for it. And with not a huge plan, I have a few questions in mind for Vanessa because she's awesome. But I wanted to just play. And today is actually, that's what we're about. I had this idea of going behind the scenes. I love behind the scenes of everything. I love to, it can be something as simple as like, how does the parking lot at Disneyland work? Or like, I love Mr. Rogers when we go to the crayon factory, or I just love to know how things work and how decisions are made. And so I kind of had this idea of maybe, and this is just play, who knows what this will evolve into. But I just wanted to go behind the scenes with Vanessa, and she's got a lot of really cool takes on the world and that have definitely affected how I've approached life. And so I thought it'd be fun to dig a little deeper with that. So with that long intro, Vanessa, welcome to my first interview today.
Episode 1.
Woo!
Yeah, thank you. I'm really, really excited to be here.
Awesome. So I thought we would start with just like a super light, simple question, just to get us rolling.
Yeah.
So what is the meaning of life?
Oh, very light. Well, I just have to say,
you don't really have to start with that one.
I did not know you were a chicken farmer, so I just need to I feel like I'm excited by that fact. I just saw it on your Facebook. It's awesome.
Oh.
Yeah. What is the meaning of life? It's a well-timed question. I'm actually reading a new book, which you'll likely soon be reading. And it's called The Book of Joy. It's actually a week transcript between Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And they're really kind of like, they're just discussing like the heaviest, most sort of like human experiences. And the point of life as they describe it is joy. And I think more and more what I'm starting to see that I didn't always see is that life is not about getting somewhere. And, in fact, for a long time, I always operated from this place of like, I'm almost there, as if there was like some destination to get to. But then you get there and you're like, I don't know, can I swear on this podcast?
Yes. I don't know. We might get kicked out.
They're your rules. Yeah, like you just get there and you're like, nothing's different. And so more and more, it's become clear to me that the purpose of life is the experience you have while you're in it. It's like, doesn't matter what you want to create. It doesn't matter what you want to do. It doesn't matter, like, there's no rules as to like what life is supposed to look like. But the point of your life, as I see it, is to just experience what you want. For most people, that's happiness, joy, and some sense of fulfillment. So for me, it really, the point of my life is about happiness, joy, fulfillment, and growth. And, I achieve my fulfillment through giving back and helping other people grow. But I think that looks different for everybody.
Cool. Do you, like this, where you're at right now with that, do you think that's been sort of ingrained in you as you have, like throughout all your life, but in different capacities?
I don't know about ingrained. I think if anything was ingrained from like a society standpoint, my parents were always super loving and follow your heart, travel the world, do what you want. And at the same time, there's this like societal pressure to be successful and follow a path and blah, blah, blah. So I think I was sort of ingrained both ways. It was like follow your heart and be super successful. And I never totally saw how those two things could go together. But if I look back at my life, a couple of things have always been really clear to me as I went back and actually looked at the experience of my life, which was I've always just been following this inner GPS that seems to send, like, it's like the friend where you're like, you always listen to, even though they have terrible ideas. And you're like, every time I listen to you, I get in trouble, but you keep doing it. That's like what my inner GPS is like. And so I think I've always just done that, not having any idea why I was on a one-way flight to Australia and then a one-way flight to Thailand, and just like following that intuition.
Oh, I like that you said that, like, because you're following this intuition and you're just doing these things, which sound a lot like exactly what I'm trying to do right here is play. Like, right. Just play, like how you have incorporated your success and following your heart. Like, is that maybe how you would describe like the connection between the two?
I would say that the success is because I followed my heart.
Okay.
That there is this like question that we ask of, how do I become successful and follow my heart? And I think the answer is in the question. If you follow your heart, you will become successful.
Okay. All right. I like that.
Vague, but I mean, there's lots of other nuances that go into
it. Totally.
But it's just like the mind, like all this, the question, the ego, the fear, the how, all that shit is like secondary to just following whatever that crazy intuition is telling you, even if you don't understand why yet. Yeah.
I think what that brings up for me is, especially as like I embarked on my own personal growth journey years ago, there is always this, be like, you can't chase the happiness. You have to be happy to have the success, right? If you follow your heart, you will be successful. But it is vague, and it is hard to sometimes like, okay, if I follow my heart, and a lot of things get in the way of that. Like, well, I have this job and I need money and I have responsibility and all these things that seem to get in the way of that. Like, it seems like, oh, I can play and I can have the fun and I can follow my heart after I do all these things. And I know for me, that has been a specific, like, that has been something I have been working on. And one of the things that drew me to you was when I first encountered you, you had this quote under your signature and on your website, and that said, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. And that was really it was intriguing, but it was also like, I was really resistant to that. I was kind of like, what do you mean you're doing it wrong if you're not having fun? Like, everyone has to go to a job. Everyone has to do these things. And yeah, you should love the job you're in. But come on, like, so could you explain a little bit more what that meant for you and how you've incorporated that into your life?
Yeah. It's more of a statement of desire, declaration, and provocation than it is a statement of truth. So for me, as much as I have spent like my whole life following my heart, I've also operated from the place that everything has to be hard. And I've worked really hard, and I prided myself that I could work harder than anybody else. And last man standing has always been my business plan, and probably forever will be. I'm a true believer in that. But I didn't always have a lot of fun. Like, I was chasing happiness, and in some respects still am, but like, it's like I was playing fetch with my happiness. If the goals were the bone, I'd run after it. And as soon as I'd catch it, I'd throw it even further. And it was just this constant chase. Mm-hmm. And so I think when that statement evolved, it was more of an understanding that I was doing it wrong. Like, I knew I wasn't having the fun I could be having. And so when that statement was born, it was actually born from a place of, I'm doing it wrong. I want to have fun. Mm-hmm. So when I wrote it, it wasn't even true. Like, for me, but I knew deep down that it was true. And so it was this idea of, rather than just declare the statement of truth that I've found and discovered this thing that you're not doing right, it was, let me declare this to be the path and live into it. So mm-hmm. let me create through this truth versus like proving that it is true. Does that distinction make sense?
Yeah, it does. But I think for the person that's on the other end, I mean, I know you were the person on the other end in a sense, but for the person who's reading that, what would you tell them? Like,
well, I would want them to get a little like triggered by it, like you did. Like I said, it was a statement of provocation. I wanted to provoke the person to read it to think, what are you talking about? Yeah, okay, fine. how that's maybe for you, but not for me. Because I think there's different ways to wake people up. Some of it's inspiration, some of it's life experience, but I also think it's okay to kind of trigger people and piss them off, just to kind of like, because you're awake then. You're feeling something instead of ignoring something.
Right.
And so for the person who's reading it, I would say, or seeing that and maybe having that experience, it might be like, what the hell are you talking about? How is that possible? It might be like, hell yeah, I want some of that. Would be to go into, to notice that you're having that experience. Like if you are upset, why does that upset you? Because deep down, it's true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why do you want more of that? And then how could you create more of that? Like, how could you have more fun? You mentioned earlier, your kind of reaction was, yeah, but I've got a job and how am I supposed to follow my heart? And I think we often look at we get a sense of the big picture we want it to look like. I want my life to look like half the year in Amsterdam, half the year in San Diego, trips all over the place all the time. Mm-hmm. And because I can't have that right now, it feels like, what can I do to do it? So if my life is boring and stifling and suffocating right now, how can you say it can be fun? If I follow my heart would tell me I want to be on a beach in Thailand, so I can't do it.
Right.
But following your heart, there's always a way to follow your heart. Always. Even if it's microscopic. And it's those microscopic steps that we forget about and ignore because they don't seem big enough, like they're not going to do anything. Mm-hmm. But it's got an exponential effect. When you start to pay attention to that inner GPS and that voice, the actions get bigger. They have a bigger impact. It takes you further, even though maybe all you did the first time was like leave work an hour early.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, so that brings me to, I know this is pretty vague and everyone has a different circumstance and a different thing going on in their life, but for the person who doesn't have a coach and doesn't even really know what to do with this, what would you tell someone? How can someone start to incorporate more fun and play into their day, like right now?
I do think that's different for everybody. I also think that there's a couple of distinctions that are useful when I talk about play. I am talking about silliness and laughter and doing things that are like just fun for the sake of it, which is probably where I'll start. But there's also a sense of happiness and fulfillment, which I put in there too. So for example, I might be happy, but I'm not playing. I might be fulfilled, but I'm not necessarily feeling good. Right. So I kind of lump those in there together. But I think the thing about play that's so important is play doesn't have a purpose. There's no you don't put play on your resume, right? And I often think in our culture, we think I'm not going to do anything unless it achieves something.
Right.
Should I go to that thing? What's it going to do? Should I take that training? How's it going to help me later? Play, what do you want to do that you enjoy right now just because you enjoy it? It might be finger painting your wall and then you have to paint over it again later. It could be, listening to music and dancing in your kitchen. It doesn't matter. The whole point of play is that it doesn't serve a purpose other than to make you feel good in the present moment. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the most important thing. One of the most transformational moments of my life happened long before I even knew coaching existed. And I was driving to work. I was 19 and I was on the phone with my sister and I was just telling her I wasn't happy. And she was like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know. And I'm laughing now as I think about how hard of a question that is that I ask people all the time. When you don't know the answer, that's so hard. I was like, I don't know. I'm just unhappy. That's what I know. And she said, I don't mean what do you want in this grand, big scheme of life. I mean, what do you want right now in this moment? You're driving to work. If you always turn right, do you want to turn left? Turn left. And I can remember exactly the stop sign I was sitting at, exactly the intersection I was sitting at. And it was like, oh, I don't have to know 20 steps in advance. I just need to know what I want right now. And so I think play is about just honoring what is that thing that you want right now that doesn't have to mean anything even 30 seconds from now.
Right. I love that. And I feel like one of the ways you've helped me incorporate that into my life just in general is a lot of times when I would get stuck with creating content or I would have things I'd want to say, but I would feel so worried about getting them out or how they would be perceived or writing, just turning them into anything that was valuable to other people. And one of the very first things you made me do was just to stop and go do something fun in that moment that was just that was not creating the content. And one of the things I gravitated to was playing cello. I learned to play cello a couple years ago. I'm not very good, but I do like to play it. And I noticed that after just like 20 minutes of playing, suddenly I felt so open and free to create. And the idea was like, this idea that I'd been struggling with just became so clear in that moment.
Exactly. Steve Chandler talks about this ladder of consciousness. And at the bottom of the ladder, we have fear, anger, worry, concern, resentment. At the top of the ladder, we have creativity, love, spirit, enlightenment, whatever you call it. At the bottom of the ladder, you're only using your primal brain. Like, you're only using the part of your brain that's wired to survival. So you only have access to those kinds of solutions. Mm-hmm. So when you're down the ladder trying to think about content, all you can think about is like this contrived way to like make people like you, you know, because connection is a part of survival. But if you're up at the top of the ladder and you have access to your entire brain, you can access the primal part, but you can also access the neocortex, the creativity, expansiveness, new opportunities and ideas. You have so much more to grab onto. And the way you get from the bottom of the ladder to the top is playing.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the what I learned from you, Steve Chandler, or many of the other coaches is one of the quickest ways to get to the top of the ladder is dancing and singing. And one thing I've incorporated into my mornings, which have really made a big difference. And it's kind of funny because I've loved music all my life, and I used to make these like crazy play mixes for my friends. Like, that was the most serious, important thing I was doing like through my days. And
it is the most important thing you ever did, actually, in terms of this conversation.
I guess so. And sometimes I will just go days without listening to music. I just kind of forget about it. And incorporating it into my morning and finding these songs that really like just connect with me, and I find myself dancing around the house, and suddenly like my day starts off completely differently from where I may have woken up that morning. So it's just such a quick jump that you can make with that. That actually leads me to, you do something really interesting on your free workshops that you do with people online. You don't call them workshops, you call them play shops. And I would love to know like what inspired that.
Yeah. Well, I stopped using the word work. I just like took it out of my vocabulary in general because of this kind of desire, declaration / struggle of making everything work and everything hard. And so John, my coach, one time just said, why don't you just stop using that word? Just use the word play instead. And so everywhere you'd say work, say play. And it's such a it's again, this is one of those like super simple things that made a huge impact on my life, because language, how we speak, how we think is also how we see the world. Mm-hmm. So when we speak differently, we experience the world differently. So when I stopped using the word work and just always started using the word play, at first it felt clunky and stupid, but now it's become like a fun thing where I'm like, oops, I said work, delete, play. And so when I wanted to do these online workshops, I was like, okay, the Fearless and Powerful Coaching Workshop. And I was like, oh shit, I can't say work. So I was like, oh, it's a play shop. And immediately the whole context of the play shop changed to something playful. And it took my coaching from this place of like heavy seriousness to playfulness. And now these play shops are fun. It's like, let's take this super heavy thing that you're working with and make it fun and light, because from the top of the ladder, we can let go of stuff we have suffered with for 20 years. And so it was almost by accident, and actually just like a word shift that actually helped this thing take on a life of its own.
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that.
And then it holds me accountable, because I'm going to show up and have fun. Like, I can't show up and be like, we got work to do.
And have you noticed a difference in the response you get from the participants from like your play shops versus old workshops?
Definitely. I mean, yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of that is how I'm showing up, you know, and it does set a certain expectation that sort of calls everybody up to be like, oh, we're here to play. Because, you know, one of the things that's so important as a human being, but as a coach, entrepreneur, I really believe in the path of mastery, taking your work seriously, but then not taking yourself so seriously. So sort of coming to this super important thing called life, but in a playful way, gives you the best of both worlds.
That's so interesting, because and I get it from intellectually, And sometimes I get it from my heart, but like sometimes it really feels like, no, we're doing something really serious, and like we still have to get to this point. And if we have too much fun, like we're not taking it seriously enough. And I don't even really know what to say about that. Like, terrible that like I'm doing a whole podcast today about, or webcast about play, and yet it still creeps up.
Yeah. I would say, and notice it and just be like, oh, there's that thing again. Let me not do that. And it, like, okay, let it get too out of control. Like, oh, shit, now we're having too much fun. And like, we're laughing too much and the people at home aren't laughing too. Like,
right.
Like, let it go too far. Find out where that place is and then rein it in.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more question for you, but before I do that, I know we have a few people watching. So if you want to ask us any questions, ask Vanessa or me any questions and want to throw it in while she's answering this last question, we will try to get to it afterwards. I don't know how long it will take to show up on my screen, so I just wanted to give you that heads up. So my last question for you is, and I'm super stoked that you showed up to this today wearing the sweatshirt you're wearing. Would you mind like jump? Yep. And so I would love to introduce this idea myself, but I actually just want you to say it because I love how you say it. So.
Okay. Are you sure you want me to do it?
Yeah. Well, okay. So this is the thing that I love about Vanessa. She is so willing to take on something that seems so, I don't want to say ridiculous because that's a terrible, but it does. It feels a little like, okay, you're going to do that. But the thing is, I have no doubt that you're going to do that. And that's what I think is so amazing about you as a coach and as a person. So anyway, Vanessa is going to coach in outer space someday. And I would love for you to explain how you came to that and how you're going to make it happen.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to coach in space. And I can't wait to share it. Something happened right before we got on this call that is just like so freaking awesome. It's funny. It was an evolution. I always was obsessed with outer space. I think the fastest answer to this is I always wanted to go all the way up or all the way down. I just like, and I laugh because I'm like, that's, a red flag living at those extremes. I see that now patterning throughout my life. But I just did. I was like, I'm either going to go to the bottom of the ocean or into space. And I would lay it in my yard at night and watch the stars and, like fast forward to my teenage years. And it was like my go-to strategy to like get the boy I like to like me back. I'm like, you're the first star. And I don't know. I just always had this like obsession. And then I took AP physics and I was like, okay, different dream. It's not going to happen. I'm not space smart. But my business plan is last man standing. So I'm like, I'll find another way in. And it really wasn't until I sort of took a departure from that dream because I really was just like, I am not space smart, like at all. I came back to it when I started coaching and this realization that anything is possible, or re-realization that I was like, oh shit, I could coach in space. Like those people need help. They're in a totally different world. You like go, you talk about like you go away to like volunteer for 2 weeks, new culture shock. You're in space. Like that's going to make you question some things. So, yeah, and then it just was an idea that popped into my head almost playfully that, then I started working with John and I created the weightless health coaching program that I do. And he said, well, why don't you do it in space? If you want it to be weightless, do it in space. And it's just the way I read it. And I was like, yo, okay. And then, I like just closed it down. I'm like, he's a nutcase. So I'm not going to pay any more attention to that. And then like the day went on and I was like, why not? Yeah, why not coach in space? And then you start to, and then what I love about ideas like this is it's a place to get to, outer space, but it's also a place to come from. If I want to coach in space, what do I do today? Like that's a pretty big goal. I'm not going to space, at the end of this call. So how do I get there from here? There's no path. I don't believe that anybody's done it, so I can't follow anybody's steps. As far as I know, you can't just hitch a ride on a rocket ship and, sneak in the luggage, but it forces you to step back and go, the person I am right now isn't going to be there. So that goal is a way for me to call more out of me than I would ever do. Like if I said I'm going to coach in South America, it's like, okay, cool, but it's not drawing. All I have to do is buy a plane ticket and go to South America. But if I want to create something that big, that crazy, that impossible, it forces you to think completely differently. So you can't use your same strategies you've used to get to where you are, because those strategies are never going to get you where you need to go. So creating impossible goals is really about drawing something bigger out of you than you'd otherwise do. And so it's a place to keep coming from, to keep playing with. And I wear the shirt so people ask me about it, because every time I talk about it, a new idea emerges or a new connection emerges. And that's how you create the impossible. You keep speaking it into existence. I have all these people that are like, you're going to do it. I'm like, I know. The more I talk about it, also the more real it gets for me and everybody else. And the more real it gets, the more you see opportunities you wouldn't otherwise see. For example, I just got a message from my coach that was like, I know how you can coach in space tomorrow, basically. And I was like, okay. And he was like, why don't you coach the astronauts who are already on the space station? You're not there, but you're still coaching in space. And I was like, yeah, I am. So it was just like, it's becoming more real.
Right.
So yeah, for me, coaching in space is a thing to work towards, because it's exciting and crazy and fun and totally ridiculous. And honors my 4-year-old self. But it's also this way of drawing out of me a completely different way of being than I would if I just said, I want to make $100,000 next month or whatever.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
You can get more playful if you want to come up with an impossible goal. Less logical. Your linear mind will never take you there. And I think that kind of brings it back to this idea of playing. If you create an impossible goal, you have to be playful and creative to make it happen.
Yeah. I also love that, like, by wearing the sweatshirt, it brings up opportunities to talk about it and just keep that conversation going. It's one of the things I've been working on with my clients as they're creating their impossible goals. It's just keep talking about it, because it's crazy. It's like, it's more than like just thinking about it or putting it on a vision board or anything like that. It's like taking actual action, because once it's out there, it's crazy. Who knows who might know who might be able to. Yeah.
The day that I bought this sweatshirt, I was live from Target, and I was like, you were on it, and I was talking about this whole thing of a conversation I had with a person who had a NASA sweatshirt on. You know, I had a Snapchat from a friend who knows I love space that said, hey, they have NASA sweatshirts at Target. So I went there, did a live. One of my clients watched it. Her cousin's an astronaut. She's been to space twice. You know, one of my other coaches, Jason Goldberg, one of his old clients was NASA. So it's like, you know, now I have these like real tangible connections that I didn't have if I had just kept it to myself and went to Target and bought my sweatshirt and left.
Right.
They'll lead anywhere, but they certainly wouldn't have if I didn't speak it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, I just want to thank you so much for joining me on my very first Facebook Live and first interview ever, and for playing around with the topic today. Do you have any last things about your message or what you're trying to do in the world that you would like to share with everyone before we go?
Yeah, I think it's something I've been cultivating a little bit myself lately, which is this idea of don't wait for life to fulfill you. You've got to create fulfillment in every life experience. I love the don't wait, because people are like, I'm actively creating it, but like through these goals, and life is always giving you exactly what you need in exactly the right amount at exactly the right time. If we look at nature and every animal, every plant, every tree, every leaf, nature is completely in charge of that flow. So what are the odds by sheer probability that you are the exception to like, nah, Aubrey's got it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's just the personal preference of the mind gets in the way that, like, I don't want this to be happening this way right now. And that's like waiting for life to give you a different set of circumstances so you can feel happy. But it's if we use every opportunity every experience in life as an opportunity to create fulfillment and play and happiness, then you're not waiting for life to give you a certain set of circumstances to be happy.
I love it. I love your message. Thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
You can Facebook friend me, Vanessa Brewers, BROERS, or you can check out my website, vanessabrewerscoaching.com.
Awesome. And thank you. I just realized I didn't even actually know how to say your last name. So thank you for
I don't either.
I will also link that in the links, the questions box after the show. And if anybody sees this later and has questions, feel free to throw them out there and we will get back to you. So again, thank you so much, Vanessa, and thanks for everybody who was watching. And episode 2 is coming someday.
Who knows when? Who knows with who?
Just gonna show up. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.